Hello everybody, back for another KT versus Samsung video. Again, we're looking at draft this game because KT's been doing some fantastic drafts. If you didn't get a chance to watch the last video, I would recommend that you do because there's some important context there for this video as well, right? So we're in playoffs, game 2 of KT versus Samsung. Samsung has beat Afrika, gone through the playoff gauntlet. Next opponent is KT. KT comes into this the favourite. So, getting right into it with the draft. First things first, that's what I was going to say. Important context, this is game 2. Game 1, Samsung lose it. They get stomped pretty hard by KT, right? They sub Cuvée out for Helper, and they bring Ruler out, or bring Stitch in for Ruler, which is really odd. But that aside, we have to note them just for the in terms of their champion pool. No one knows what champions Stitch plays at this point, though, so that's important to keep in mind as well. Helper has not really looked that great this season, apart from on Maokai and Rumble. He really hasn't seen much, and that is a big factor for this as well, right? So this is the order the picks are locked in. Let's look at the bans. Aurelion Sol away from Fly. This is standard. On red side, it's really hard to give him that pick because it's pretty terrifying to play against, in all honesty. Then let's see. Trundle away from Someday. This tends to indicate a top lane tank matchup, which makes sense given what we just said about Helper. They don't want to have to pick a tank into Someday if Trundle is open and Someday can just poop on them. Gragas away. This is quite odd, banning Gragas away. Considering your blue side, it normally means that you have something else that you want to first pick in mind. But the fact that they ban Gragas away and then take Rek'Sai means that whatever they were planning on first picking probably got taken away. Maybe it was the Tahm Kench, or maybe it was the Echo. It's hard to say. Varus ban is just standard. Echo considered very strong right now. And Tahm Kench counterpick to a lot of champions. Counterpick to Ashe, counterpick to Jhin, counterpick to Malzahar. Malzahar's quite an important pick in this meta at the moment. Right, so let's get into it. So the first pick is Rek'Sai, and this again is pretty odd. But the problem here really is that Gangplank is up, right? So if they have Cuvée in the roster right now, then this is fine. This ban phase is absolutely fine, but they don't, and Helper doesn't play Gangplank. Someday does. Okay, so KT has banned Gangplank pretty much every game this season. Someday I don't think he's played it at all. He's not played it at all this season, as far as I'm aware. But this is still a massive risk, leaving it open for him. Why? Because for anyone who watched Worlds last year, Gangplank was basically insta-pick / ban, and every top laner there had to know how to play Gangplank, just in case by some miracle he was actually up at the end of the pick ban phase, because he was broken. He was ridiculous. Also, Someday just in general, fantastic top laner, fantastic carry player, loves carrying, right? So really risky to leave that open. They also leave Taliyah open. Now this is a big part of the reason why KT doesn't ban Malzahar. We commented on that. That's because Taliyah is good into Malzahar, and that plays a key feature in this draft later on. Last time we saw Have pretty much sealed out the top lane position by eliminating all of the good counter picks that were available and then taking the remaining ones, and that's pretty much what happens in this game, except this time it's with the mid lane. So moving on in the draft, Wraith gets his Alistar. That's fine, he's really good on Alistar. Stitch gets Ashe. We don't know anything about Stitch's champion pool. Maybe it's his most comfortable. Maybe that's just the style that Samsung likes playing the most, because that's Ruler's most played champion. So it makes sense. Okay. Then we get Elise Jhin. All of this is fairly predictable. The Jhin could have been something else, or whatever. But this is the important part. KT decides to leave their support until last. And this is really clever for a bunch of reasons, right? Important to note that Tahm Kench is out here, and he's a counter to Malzahar. But, so what mid lane picks does Crown have left at this point, right? So at this point we have Gangplank, Taliyah, Elise, and Jhin locked in. So they have a lot of pick pressure. Taliyah, as we mentioned, is a Malzahar counter pick. Fly, fantastic Taliyah. They also have double globals because of Gangplank and Taliyah, right? And just super pick strength. They also have a really, really abusive 2v2 in the mid lane. Taliyah and Elise make such short work of pretty much anyone who isn't very mobile. Again, really key factor here. So what's left in Crown's champion pool? All right. Varus is down. Probably wouldn't play Varus here anyway. Malzahar is up, but Talia counters Malzahar. And also, really important to note, Gangplank can just eat oranges, so that's 2 of your targets already gone, right? Just 2 of your what's the word? Nethergrasp ulti targets are just pretty much gone. Or not gone, but you have a rough laning phase and you can't Nethergrasp the top laner. Also, Jhin going to be really far away, pretty hard to Nethergrasp him. If it's like a Sivir or something that's going to be fighting at close range, then Nethergrasp can work, right? You can Nethergrasp the AD carry, going to build a QSS anyway, but at least in the early to mid game it will work. But the laning phase is going to suck, and the Gangplank is not going to be able to be Nethergrasped unless he's already burnt his W, his remove scurvy, and Jhin is probably going to be too far away for you most of the time anyway. So Malzahar's probably off the table. Okay, let's look at Lissandra, what the pick that they opt to go for. Again, we have the same thing. Talia is going to shove you in and out-roam you. Lissandra is great at roaming. You normally picked up double teleport to do this, but Talia pretty much counters this. Talia has longer range wave clear, really nice gank pressure, even pre-6. You can take cleanse to just cleanse out of the Lissandra ulti. Gangplank can cleanse out of the Lissandra ulti. Again, Jhin, it's going to be hard to reach him. And, importantly, the Taric pick actually really counters the Lissandra pick, because when Lissandra claws in, you have this big warning sign, hit your Taric ulti, right? So Lissandra is also probably not a great pick. But at this point, what's really left? Can you pick Vladimir? Again, no. They save their support until last. If you pick Vladimir here, they pick Taric, and your Hemoplague becomes absolutely worthless. You will never go off as long as Hachani is around. Hachani's shown that a bunch of times, okay? What else can you pick? You can pick LeBlanc, but you're going to get shoved in, and you're going to get ganked a lot very early. You're going to get outwave pressured, and you're going to have a bad time in general. I think LeBlanc might have been one of the better picks for this, but I don't know what the mid lane matchup is for LeBlanc into Talia, but I imagine it's basically you get shoved in and Talia roams. You get shoved in, Talia roams. That's why they wanted to have Lissandra, so that they can take double TP, so that they can counter some of that. But for the reasons we just talked about, Lissandra actually, compositionally, doesn't have many targets to go on. So who else do they have? Someone we talked about a little bit last game is Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia, well, we talked about the early 2v2 matchup and how abusive Talia and Elise is. Well, Cassiopeia is really immobile, and if she gets Gangplank ultied or walled off, or Jhin roams, or Elise is there, she's going to get dived repeatedly, and there's a lot of long-range damage here to counter the Cassiopeia. I mean, who's Cassiopeia going to actually ulti? Everyone here is firing from range to make picks, okay? So the only real pick left is Viktor, which I don't really get why they didn't go for it, to be honest. I mean, the Taric ulti to a certain extent, but a much lesser extent, counters the Viktor ulti. Maybe they just don't like Viktor into Talia. Talia, again, pretty good into everything. Pretty good into everything and will out-roam you. So either they pick what is a good matchup in terms of the early game pressure and ability to roam, but actually bad into the team comp, or they pick Viktor, who will get shoved in and roamed on, and who doesn't tend to take teleport, tends to take ghost, would probably need cleanse against this team, or definitely need cleanse if you ask me. And you just get bullied for the entire laning phase, and KT out-roams you because Fly has his Weaver's Wall. Also, the leaving the support to the last pick is really nice because you can predict with a fair degree of certainty that Helper's going to pick Rumble here because it's the only thing he's actually shown. I mean, he could have picked Gnar, to be fair. He could have picked Gnar. But again, Gnar is fairly telegraphed. So what could Samsung have done to make this better? Obviously, you ban the Gangplank out here, right? I think, personally, that Viktor would be the better choice here because even if you do get roamed on in the early game, Lissandra is going to have problems with this type of composition, playing into this kind of composition. You also have very limited wave clear with Lissandra. Lissandra's wave clear is very short range, and you're playing into Jhin Taric, right? So I feel that Viktor would probably have been better here. I also don't like the Gragas ban. I think you just drop the Gragas ban and you take Gangplank, or you ban Gangplank, sorry. You don't drop the Gragas and you take Gangplank first. And if you can't play Gangplank, then why leave Gangplank up over Gragas? This was, I guess, what they thought was a calculated risk, but all in all turned out to be a pretty sucky one. pretty sucky one. Oh, one more thing about the leaving the support till last. Also, they early rotation Alistar, which I can see for Wraith just being really good on that. But again, it leaves the Taric pick open because there's no lane counter. Taric is known as a weak laner, right? If you early rotation Alistar, there's nothing to stop you there. There's really not that much kill pressure on this bottom lane until level 6, I guess. Just in terms of the laning patterns, like you have melee support into melee support, so you're fine picking Taric there. Alistar not known for his strong laning, much more of a playmaking ganking champion, but yeah. So something did just occur to me, though we haven't seen her much and she has been nerfed. I actually would have really liked to see Karma here. I think Karma would have been a perfectly fine pick as a second round pick / flex. You get Karma and Ashe. I think that probably would have been the best they could have done here. And then you hide some of this, and it means that KT is probably less likely to delay their support pick until last. Maybe not. Maybe they still go with what they've gone. Oh no, they'll probably still leave their support pick till last, but it does at least give you some flexibility in your draft, and it does mean that you're less open to being abused. Even if you do go for the Lissandra later, or you go for whatever you go for here, I think Karma fits in. She's pretty much good in every comp, and it, at least if they do pick Taric, makes the matchup quite bad for the laning phase. And if you decide to pick Vladimir, at least Karma synergizes really, really well with Vladimir. And if you get Karma, you also have the option of going Sivir here. Lots and lots and lots of reasons. So that's what I think about this draft. Overall, KT wins it, and if you do get the chance to watch this game, obviously we're not going to go through it, but I definitely recommend that you do. It's really, really interesting game to watch, and Sunday's performance is absolutely hilarious. So with that said, that's going to be everything from me. Once again, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments section if you have any suggestions for this video, if you have any other opinions that I don't seem to have expressed, if there's something that I've missed out, or just if you have feedback for my content in general, I would really appreciate that. So this was Mac, much love, signing out.